in the shadowed halls of Greystone Manor. A grand celebration turns sinister when Sir Reginald Ashford vanishes, leaving only a cryptic note: "I must go. Forgive me." Blood stains the boathouse. A shoe floats in the lake, and a hidden letter warns, "The past will find you." Who orchestrated this chilling disappearance? Was it the elegant Lady Beatrice, hiding a scandalous secret? The charming stranger, Julian Trent, with a past tied to the Manor's darkest corners? Or someone closer, driven by betrayal and greed? Join Hercule Poirot as he unravels a web of lies where every clue masks a deeper truth, and a sad sacrifice threatens to destroy them all. Well, the little gray cells uncover the mastermind before the past claims its final victim. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Greystone Manor. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden fingers across the manicured lawns of Greystone Manor, a sprawling Elizabethan estate nestled in the heart of the Sussex countryside. The air was thick with the scent of roses and freshly cut grass, and a gentle breeze stirred the heavy velvet curtains in the drawing room, where a small but eclectic company had gathered for what was promised to be a weekend of refinement and repose. The occasion was the 50th birthday of Sir Reginald Ashford, retired industrialist whose fortune had been built on steel, and whose reputation rested on an almost fanatical devotion to privacy. Yet, for reasons known only to himself, he had opened his home to a select group of guests, each of whom now sipped tea or sherry, while exchanging polite banalities under the watchful gaze of an ancient chandelier. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal friend and chronicler, stood near the grand fireplace, his eyes drifting over the assembly with a mixture of curiosity and unease. There was something in the air, an undercurrent of tension that no amount of fine china or polished silver could dispel. Perhaps it was the way Lady Beatrice Ashford, Sir Reginald's much younger wife, fluttered her fan with a touch too much vigor, her emerald eyes darting toward the door as though expecting an uninvited guest. Or perhaps it was the strained smile of Dr. Lionel Warrender, the family physician, his fingers twitched around his teacup as he conversed with Miss Clara Henshaw, Sir Reginald's sharp-tongued niece. Clara, a woman of 25 with a penchant for modern novels and an even sharper wit, seemed to delight in needling the doctor, her laughter ringing a fraction too loud. Across the room, near a bookcase stuffed with leather-bound volumes, stood Mr. Victor Langston, solicitor with a hawkish face and a reputation for handling Sir Reginald's more delicate financial affairs. His conversation with Mrs. Evelyn Warrender, the doctor's wife, was punctuated by long pauses, as though each were weighing the other's words for hidden meaning. Evelyn, a pale woman with an air of quiet resignation, clutched a lace handkerchief, her eyes occasionally straying to her husband with a look that Hastings could not quite decipher: fear, perhaps, or pity. The final guest, Mr. Julian Trent, was the oddity of the group, a young man of no discernible occupation. He had arrived at Greystone Manor with an invitation that surprised even Sir Reginald, who claimed to have met him only once at a London club. Trent's charm was undeniable, his dark hair and easy smile drawing attention, yet there was a restlessness in his movements, a tendency to glance over his shoulder as though pursued by an invisible shadow. Hastings adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of the room's atmosphere settle upon him. He had come to Greystone Manor at the insistence of his old friend Hercule Poirot, who had promised a weekend of quiet observation. "Mon ami," Poirot had said, his eyes twinkling with that familiar gleam. "Where there is wealth, there is intrigue, and where there is intrigue, there is work for the little gray cells." Yet Poirot had not yet arrived, delayed by a minor matter in London. The Hastings felt oddly adrift without the detective's steady presence. The clock on the mantel struck 5, case chimes resonating through the room like a summons. Sir Reginald himself entered at that moment, a tall man with iron gray hair and a face etched with the lines of a life spent commanding others. His smile was courteous but strained, and his greeting to the guests carried the formality of a man unused to such gatherings. "My dear friends," he began, raising a glass of sherry, "I thank you for joining us to celebrate this milestone. Greystone Manor has stood for centuries, a testament to endurance, and I hope this weekend will be a moment of joy for us all." The words were gracious, but Hastings noted the slight tremor in Sir Reginald's hand as he set down his glass. Lady Beatrice moved to his side, her smile radiant but her eyes cold. "To my husband," she said, lifting her own glass. "Okay, may his years be as enduring as this house." The toast was echoed, but the clinking of glasses felt hollow. Clara Henshaw's lips curled into a smirk, and Dr. Warrender's face darkened for a moment before he recovered his composure. Hastings, ever observant in his own way, felt a prickle of unease. There was something amiss here, something that lurked beneath the surface of this polite gathering like a shadow in deep water. Dinner was announced shortly after. A party moved to the dining room, a cavernous space adorned with portraits of Ashford ancestors whose stern gazes seemed to follow the guests. The meal was exquisite roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and a claret of exceptional vintage, but the conversation faltered. Sir Reginald spoke little, his attention fixed on his plate, while Lady Beatrice dominated the table with tales of her travels in Italy. Julian Trent, seated beside her, listened with apparent fascination, though Hastings noticed his fingers drumming lightly on the tablecloth, a nervous tic that belied his charm. As the dessert course was served a delicate lemon soufflé, Clara Henshaw leaned toward Hastings, her voice low. "Tell me, Captain, do you find this gathering as peculiar as I do? Everyone seems to be playing a part, don't you think?" Hastings chuckled, though her words struck a chord. "Perhaps it's just a setting, Miss Henshaw. Old houses have a way of making one feel watched." She raised an eyebrow, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Perhaps it's the company. I'd wager there's more than one secret in this room." Before Hastings could respond, a sharp cry cut through the air. All eyes turned to Evelyn Warrender, who had risen from her chair, her face ashen. Her handkerchief lay crumpled on the floor, and her hands trembled as she pointed toward the window. There outside, I saw someone. The room erupted into murmurs as the guests craned their necks to peer into the darkness beyond the glass. Sir Reginald stood, his voice firm. "Nonsense, Evelyn. It's likely just a gardener or a trick of the light." But Hastings, following her gaze, saw nothing but the black expanse of the lawn, bathed in moonlight. Dr. Warrender hurried to his wife's side, murmuring reassurances, but her eyes remained wide with fear. The moment passed, and the dinner resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Suspicion, like a chill draft, had entered the room as the guests retired to the drawing room for coffee. Hastings slipped away to the terrace, needing air to clear his thoughts. The night was cool, the stars sharp against the velvet sky. Key lit a cigarette, the glow of the match briefly illuminating his face, and considered the evening's events. Evelyn's outburst, Clara's cryptic remark, Sir Reginald's uneasy was a thread in a tapestry he could not yet decipher. A soft footfall behind him made him turn, and he found himself face to face with Julian Trent. The young man's smile was disarming, but his eyes were sharp. "A fine night, Captain," he said, lighting his own cigarette. "Oh, I dare say it's not as peaceful as it seems." Hastings nodded, wary. "You've noticed it too, then?" The tension. Trent exhaled a plume of smoke, his gaze fixed on the distant woods. "Oh yes, this house is full of secrets. Secrets, Captain, have a way of getting out." Before Hastings could press him further, the sound of a bell rang from within the house, urgent and insistent. The two men exchanged a glance and hurried back inside, where chaos awaited. Lady Beatrice stood in the center of the drawing room, her face pale, her hands clutching a folded piece of paper. "It's Reginald," she whispered. "He's gone." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Sir Reginald Ashford, the master of Greystone Manor, had vanished from his own home, leaving behind only a cryptic note clutched in his wife's trembling hands. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Absence. The drawing room of Greystone Manor. So recently a stage for polite conversation and clinking glasses, now bore the stifling air of a courtroom. The guests stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the folded note in Lady Beatrice Ashford's trembling hands. Her lips, usually curved in a practiced smile, quivered as she unfolded the paper, revealing a single line scrawled in Sir Reginald's distinctive angular handwriting. "I must go. Forgive me." The words hung in the air like a confession, though to what, no one could yet say. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the doorway, felt his pulse quicken. The note was too brief, too ambiguous, to suggest anything but trouble. He glanced at the assembled company, searching for clues in their faces. Clara Henshaw's eyes narrowed, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup as though it were a lifeline. Dr. Lionel Warrender's face was a mask of professional calm, but his hands, clasped behind his back, betrayed a faint tremor. His wife, Evelyn, still pale from her earlier fright, clutched her husband's arm, her gaze darting between the note and the darkened windows. Tor Langston, the solicitor, stood apart, his hawkish features unreadable, though his eyes lingered on Lady Beatrice with an intensity that made Hastings uneasy. Julian Trent, the enigmatic stranger, leaned against the bookcase, his casual posture at odds with the sharpness in his eyes. "Where was this found?" Clana's voice cut through the silence, sharp and demanding. She stepped forward, her auburn curls catching the light of the chandelier, and when Lady Beatrice, regaining some of her composure, straightened in the study. "Just now. I went to check on Reginald. He hadn't returned after excusing himself during coffee." The note was on his desk, beside his pen. The ink was still wet. Wet. Victor Langston's voice was low, almost a murmur, but it carried a weight that drew every eye. "Then he cannot have gone far, lest someone else wrote it." Clara interjected, her tone laced with suspicion. "It's his hand, yes, but anyone could have forged it. We should search the house at once." Dr. Warrender cleared his throat, his voice measured. "Let us not leap to conclusions. Reginald may simply have stepped out for a walk. The note suggests a voluntary departure, does it not?" "Voluntary?" Lady Beatrice's laugh was brittle, like glass on the verge of shattering. "Reginald would never leave his own birthday celebration without a word. Something is wrong. I feel it." Hastings, observing the exchange, wished fervently for Poirot's presence. The little Belgian detective would already be noting the cadence of each voice, the flicker of each glance, piecing together the puzzle with his inimitable precision. But Poirot was still en route from London, and Hastings knew he must act as his friend's eyes and ears until he arrived. "Perhaps," Hastings ventured, stepping forward, "we should indeed search the house and grounds. If Sir Reginald is still here, we must find him, and, if he is not—" He let the sentence hang, unwilling to voice the darker possibilities. The group agreed, albeit with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Lady Beatrice, insisting on leading the search, divided the party into pairs. She and Clara would take the upper floors, Dr. Warrender and Evelyn the ground floor, and Hastings and Langston the gardens and outbuildings. Julian Trent, to everyone's surprise, volunteered to remain in the drawing room, claiming he would keep an eye on things and ensure no one tampered with the scene. That's Hastings and Langston stepped into the cool night air. The solicitor lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his sharp features. "Strange business, Captain," he said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Sir Reginald is not a man to act impulsively. This note, it feels staged." Hastings nodded, his eyes scanning the shadowed lawn. "You've known him long, I take it?" 20 years, Langston replied, his tone clipped. He trusted me with his affairs, financial and otherwise. But lately, he's been distracted, secretive, even secretive. Hastings pressed, sensing a thread worth pulling. In what way? Langston hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the house. "Stet," he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir Reginald's fortune is not what it once was. He's made risky investments, and there are creditors circling. He didn't want Beatrice to know." Hastings filed the information away, his mind racing. This could be a motive for disappearance, or something worse. As they approached the stables, a faint rustling in the bushes made them pause. His hand shot to his pocket, as though reaching for something. But he relaxed when a fox darted across the path, its eyes glinting in the moonlight. The search yielded nothing. The stables were empty, the gardener's shed locked, and the boathouse by the lake silent, save for the lapping of water against the dock. By the time Hastings and Langston returned to the house, the others had reconvened in the drawing room, their faces etched with frustration. No trace of Sir Reginald had been found, not in the bedrooms, the library, or the kitchens. The note remained the only clue, its cryptic message taunting them. It was then that the butler, stooped man named Perkins, entered with a grave expression. "Madame," he said, addressing Lady Beatrice, "I've just checked the master's study more thoroughly, as you instructed. His safe is open, and the contents are gone. Gone." Lady Beatrice's voice rose, sharp with alarm. "What was in it?" Perkins hesitated, glancing at the assembled guests. "His will, madam, had a collection of letters. I don't know the details, but he always kept them locked away." The room erupted into murmurs. Clara's eyes flashed with interest, while Dr. Warrender's face grew even paler. Evelyn clutched her handkerchief, and Julian Trent, still lounging against the bookcase, raised an eyebrow. Langston, however, remained silent, his expression unreadable. Hastings felt a chill settle over him. A missing will, a cache of letters, a vanished host. This was no mere disappearance. He was about to suggest calling the police when the sound of a car engine rumbled outside, followed by the crunch of gravel under tires. The drawing-room doors swung open, and there, framed in the doorway, stood Hercule Poirot. His small, neat figure was immaculate as ever, patent leather shoes gleaming, mustache perfectly waxed, eyes bright with the anticipation of a challenge. "Mon ami Hastings," he exclaimed, his voice warm but tinged with urgency. "I arrive, and already I sense the air is thick with mystery. Tell me what has occurred in this so charming manor." Hastings quickly recounted the evening's events: the dinner, Evelyn's sighting of a figure outside, Sir Reginald's disappearance, the note, and now the empty safe. Poirot listened intently, his head tilted slightly, his fingers steepled. Before him, when Hastings finished, Poirot's eyes swept the room, taking in each guest with the precision of a jeweler examining a gem. "Most interesting," he murmured, his voice soft but commanding. "A man vanishes, a safe is emptied, and a note speaks of forgiveness. Tell me, Lady Beatrice, these letters in the safe they of a personal nature?" Lady Beatrice flushed, her fan snapping shut. I don't know. Reginald never spoke of them. They were old, I think, tied with a ribbon." Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. "In the will, who stood to benefit?" Langston stepped forward, his voice steady. "I drew it up myself, last year. Lady Beatrice inherits the bulk of the estate, with provisions for Miss Henshaw and a few charities. But it's worthless without the document itself." "Worthless." Poirot's tone was deceptively mild, or perhaps priceless to someone who wishes it destroyed. A heavy silence fell. Poirot moved to the center of the room, his small frame radiating authority. "Amos, we are in the presence of a puzzle most intricate. A man does not vanish without reason, nor does the safe empty itself. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. But first, I must see this study, and then I shall speak with each of you. The little gray cells, they are already at work. I'll see. Turned toward the door. Hastings caught a glimpse of Clara's face, her lips parted, her eyes alight with something that might have been fear, or perhaps excitement. Okay. The game, as Poirot would say, was afoot. Chapter 3. The Study of Secrets. The Study of Sir Reginald Ashford. Tucked away at the far end of Greystone Manor's west wing was a room that seemed to hold the weight of its owner's life. Dark oak panels lined the walls, their surfaces gleaming under the soft glow of a single green-shaded lamp. A heavy mahogany desk dominated the space, its surface cluttered with papers, an inkstand, and a silver cigarette case engraved with Sir Reginald's initials. The air was thick with the scent of old leather and pipe tobacco. And the tall windows, framed by brocade curtains, overlooked the shadowed lawn where Evelyn Warrender had claimed to see a figure only hours before. Hercule Poirot stood in the doorway, his small, neat figure silhouetted against the corridor's light, his eyes scanning the room with the precision of a watchmaker. Captain Arthur Hastings followed close behind, his heart still racing from the revelation of the empty safe. Poirot's arrival had brought a sense of order to the chaos. But the mystery of Sir Reginald's disappearance loomed larger with every passing minute. The guests, dismissed to their rooms with instructions to remain available for interviews, had dispersed reluctantly, their faces etched with suspicion and unease. Lady Beatrice had lingered longest, her hands twisting the note as though it might yield further secrets. But Poirot had gently ushered her out, insisting that the study must be examined undisturbed. "Mon ami," Poirot said, stepping into the room with the deliberate grace of a cat, observed the scene. A man's study is his sanctuary, his mind laid bare in wood and paper. What does this room tell us of Sir Reginald Ashford? Hastings glanced around, uncertain where to begin. The room was orderly, almost obsessively so, with books arranged by size on the shelves and a row of fountain pens aligned with military precision on the desk. A safe, a squat iron box set into the wall behind a portrait of a stern-faced Ashford ancestor, stood open, its door slightly ajar. He was meticulous, Hastings ventured, a man who lacked control. Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching slightly. Precisement. And yet, this note, he gestured to the slip of paper, now placed on the desk by Lady Beatrice, suggests a man in distress, a man who acts in haste. This is not the work of a meticulous mind, unless, Ski trailed off, his eyes narrowing. As he approached the desk, Poirot bent over the note, examining it without touching it. "I must go. Forgive me. The ink, as Lady Beatrice noted, is fresh. The pen lies here, uncapped, as though abandoned mid-thought. But look, Hastings, the blotter beneath. There is no trace of ink, no smudge where a hand might have rested. This is curious, Nan." Hastings frowned, peering at the pristine blotter. "You mean he didn't write it here?" "Or," Poirot said, his voice low, "he wrote it with great care, which does not align with the urgency of the message. A man who flees does not pause to keep his desk tidy." He straightened, his gaze sweeping the room. "Let us examine this safe." The safe was empty, as Perkins had reported, its interior lined with green felt that bore faint impressions of its former contentous stack of papers, perhaps, and something smaller, rectangular. Poirot ran a gloved finger along the edge, his brow furrowed. Letters tied with a ribbon and a will. These are items of great personal value, yet they are gone, and Sir Reginald with them, or so we are meant to believe. Hastings felt a prickle of excitement. "You think this is staged? That he's not really gone?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "I think nothing, mon ami, until the facts speak. but I observed. The safe is opened without force, no scratches, no damage. The Sir Reginald opened it himself, or someone knew the combination. In this room, he turned slowly, taking in every detail. It is too perfect. No chair askew, no rug disturbed. A man does not vanish from such a place without leaving a trace, lest that trace is meant to be hidden. Poirot moved to the windows, inspecting the latches. They were secure, the glass unmarred. He knelt, his eyes scanning the floor, and paused at a faint scuff mark near the desk, a smudge of dirt, barely visible against the polished wood. "Tiens," he murmured, producing a small magnifying glass from his pocket. "This is not the dirt of a gardener's boot, nor the mud of the lawn. It is fine, almost powdery, curious." Hastings, eager to contribute, pointed to the cigarette case. Could that be a clue? Perhaps he left it behind in a hurry. Poirot opened the case, revealing a dozen cigarettes neatly arranged. Perhaps. But Sir Reginald, I am told, was a pipe smoker. Why, then, a cigarette case? And why so full if he intended to flee? He closed it with a snap and turned his attention to the bookshelves, running a finger along the spines. One book, a worn copy of the Odyssey, was slightly misaligned, its edge protruding a fraction. Poirot pulled it out, revealing a small, folded piece of paper tucked behind it. Hastings leaned forward, his breath catching. Another note. Poirot unfolded it carefully. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but legible. It read, "Meet me at midnight by the lake. Tell no one." The signature was a single initial, BB. Hastings repeated, "Beatrice, or someone else," Poirot said, his voice soft. "This is old. Hastings, perhaps years old. Yet it is placed where it might be found, a clue or a distraction." He tucked the note into his pocket, his expression unreadable. There. Inspection was interrupted by a knock at the door. Perkins, the butler, entered, his face pale. "Sir, there's been a discovery. In the boathouse. One of the groundsmen found blood." Poirot's eyes sharpened, though his voice remained calm. "Blood, you say? Show me." The boathouse, a weathered structure by the lake's edge, was a 10-minute walk from the manor. The night was cold, the moon casting a silver sheen over the water. The groundsman, a wiry man named Tompkins, stood waiting, his lantern trembling in his hand. "It's inside, sir," he said, gesturing to the door. On the floor, near the boat, Poirot stepped inside, his movements deliberate. The boathouse smelled of damp wood and tar, and a single rowboat bobbed gently in its mooring. On the floor, near a coil of rope, was a dark stained mistakably blood, though not a large quantity. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass catching the lantern's light. "Fresh," he murmured. "No more than a few hours old, but not enough for a fatal wound, I think." Hastings felt a chill that had little to do with the night air. Sir Reginald. Poirot did not answer immediately. He examined the surrounding area, noting a single footprint in the dust a man's shoe, size 10, with a distinctive tread. "This is no accident," he said at last. "Someone was here, and someone bled. But whether it is Sir Reginald, we cannot yet say." As they returned to the manor, Poirot's silence was heavy with thought. Hastings, struggling to keep pace, ventured, "What now, Poirot?" "The police." Poirot shook his head. "Not yet, mon ami. The police, they will trample the delicate threads of this mystery. First, I must speak with the guests. Each has a story, and each, I suspect, has a secret. We begin with Lady Beatrice. Her note, her ferret is the key to this puzzle, or perhaps the lock." Back in the drawing room, Poirot summoned Lady Beatrice. She entered, her elegance marred by the strain in her eyes. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Have you found him?" "Not yet," Madame Poirot replied, his tone gentle but firm. "But I have found questions. Tell me, when did you last see your husband?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting the fan in her hands. "After dinner, when he excused himself to the study. He said he needed to review some papers. I thought nothing of it. He often works late." "And is safe?" Poirot pressed. "You knew its contents." Her eyes flickered, only vaguely. Reginald was private about such things. The will, some old letters. He never shared details. Poirot nodded, his gaze unwavering. "And the figure Mrs. Warrender saw outside? Did you see it also?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "I was at the table, talking with Mr. Trent." Poirot's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "Merci, madame. That will be all, for now." As she left, Hastings leaned in. "What do you think, Poirot? Is she hiding something?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. "Everyone, mon ami, is hiding something. But what, and why, these are the questions that will lead us to Sir Reginald, or to his fate." Chapter 4. The interrogations begin the drawing room of Greystone Manor. Bathed in the pale light of a new dawn, had lost its air of elegance. The velvet curtains, drawn back to reveal a mist-shrouded lawn, seemed to sag under the weight of the night's events. The guests, summoned by Hercule Poirot at precisely 7 o'clock, sat in a semicircle of upholstered chairs, their faces a study in exhaustion and suspicion. The discovery of blood in the boathouse had cast a pall over the house, and the absence of Sir Reginald Ashford, now stretching into its 12th hour, felt like a wound that refused to close. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, watching as Poirot took his place at the center of the room. The little Belgian detective was immaculate as ever, his suit pressed, his mustache waxed to a perfect curl, but his eyes burned with a quiet intensity that Hastings knew well. It was the look of a man whose little gray cells were in full motion, piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that grew more complex with each revelation. "Miss Amos," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured. "We are gathered to uncover the truth of Sir Reginald Ashford's disappearance. A note, a missing will, a stain of blood. These are not mere accidents, but threads in a tapestry of deceit. I shall speak with each of you, and I ask for your honesty. The smallest detail may be the key to this mystery." The guests exchanged glances, some wary, others defiant. Lady Beatrice, seated nearest the fire, clutched her fan, her face pale but composed. Clara Henshaw, her auburn curls slightly disheveled, leaned forward with an air of eager curiosity. Dr. Lionel Warrender sat stiffly, his hands folded in his lap, while his wife, Evelyn, twisted her handkerchief, her eyes darting nervously. Victor Langston, the solicitor, maintained his usual reserve, though his fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair. Julian Trent, lounging with an air of studied nonchalance, met Poirot's gaze with a faint smile, as though daring the detective to unravel him. Poirot began with Clara Henshaw, gesturing for her to join him at a small table near the window. The others remained seated, their ears straining to catch every word, though Poirot's soft tone made it difficult. Hastings, standing close enough to overhear, noted the detective's method, calm, precise, and relentlessly probing. "Mademoiselle Henshaw," Poirot said, his eyes fixed on her. "You are Sir Reginald's niece. Oui? Tell me of your relationship with him." Clara's lips curved into a wry smile. "Uncle Reginald was distant, generous. Mind you, he paid for my education, my travels, but we weren't close. He was too busy with his factories and his secrets to bother with family." "Secrets?" Poirot's voice was gentle, almost coaxing. "What secrets did he keep?" She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward Lady Beatrice. He was always writing letters, locking them away. Hey, and he'd been moody lately, snapping at the staff, avoiding Beatrice. I thought it was his health doctor. Warner was always hovering, prescribing this or that. Poirot nodded, making a mental note. And last night, where were you between 9 and 10 o'clock when Sir Reginald was last seen? Clara's smile faded. Aquamis in the dining room until we moved here for coffee. Then I stayed, talking with you, Captain Hastings, until Beatrice found the note. I didn't leave this room. Rissy, Mademoiselle. Poirot dismissed her with a nod, his expression unreadable, and turned to Dr. Warrender. The physician approached, his face a mask of professional calm, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Dr. Poirot began. You attended Sir Reginald's health. Was he, perhaps, under strain? Condition that might explain a sudden departure? Warrender cleared his throat, his voice steady. Sir Reginald was in good health for a man of 50, though he suffered from occasional headaches. I prescribed mild sedatives, nothing more. As for strain, he was preoccupied. Business matters, I assumed. And last night, Poirot pressed, your movements. I was with the others during dinner, Warrender said. Afterward, I stepped into the library to fetch a book Velling can confirm, a Petticarfi, and I was here when Lady Beatrice raised the alarm. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. The library is near the study, is it not? Did you hear anything unusual? Warrender shook his head. Nothing. The house was quiet. Poirot dismissed him and called Evelyn Warrender, the doctor's wife. Approached, her hands trembling as she clutched her handkerchief. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely above a whisper. I saw something, she said before Poirot could ask. Outside, during dinner, a figure near the trees. I swear it. Describe this figure, Poirot said, his tone soothing. It was dark, tall, a man, I think. He moved quickly toward the lake, eyes filled with tears. I told Lionel, but he said it was my imagination. Your movements. After dinner, Poirot asked. I stayed with the others, she said. I didn't leave this room until we searched the house. Poirot thanked her and moved on to Victor Langston. The solicitor's answers were clipped, precise. He had been in the dining room, then the drawing room, and had noticed nothing unusual until the note was found. Sir Reginald was troubled, he admitted when pressed. He mentioned debts, but nothing specific. I urged him to confide in me, but he refused. Finally, Poirot turned to Julian Trent. The young man sauntered to the table, his smile almost mocking. Monsieur Trent, Poirot said, you are a stranger to this house, yet you are here by Sir Reginald's invitation. Why? Trent shrugged. We met at a club in London. He liked my conversation, said I'd liven up his party. I'm a bit of a wanderer. You see no ties, no obligations. And last night, Poirot's voice was sharp now. Where were you? In the dining room, charming Lady Beatrice, Trent said, his smile widening. Then here, keeping an eye on things. I didn't wander off, if that's what you're asking. Poirot's eyes lingered on him, but he said nothing more, dismissing Trent with a wave. As the guests dispersed, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Each tells a story, mon ami, but none tells the whole truth. The alibis, they are too neat, too aligned. In this figure, Mrs. Warrender said, is a thread we must follow. Hastings nodded, his mind racing. What about the blood in the boathouse, in the note behind the book? Poirot's smile was faint. The blood is a warning, perhaps, or a deception. The note, meet me at midnight, by the lake. It is old, but placed where we would find it. Someone wishes to guide our thoughts. Hastings. But to what end? Poirot moved to the window, his gaze fixed on the lake. Let us walk, mon ami. The boathouse calls to us again. There is something there we have missed. The morning air was crisp, the mist still clinging to the ground as they approached the boathouse. Poirot examined the bloodstain once more, his magnifying glass glinting in the weak sunlight. "This footprint," he said, pointing to the size 10. "Tread. It is deliberate, to clear. A man does not walk in dust and leave only one mark." Hastings frowned. "You think it's planted, perhaps," Poirot said. He moved to the boat, running a hand along its edge. His fingers paused at a small splinter caught in the wood and a faint smear of what looked like grease. "Tins," he murmured, producing a small envelope to collect the splinter. "This is not from the boathouse. It is mechanical. Oil, perhaps, from a car," Hastings suggested. "Or something smaller," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "We must learn more of this lake, this boat, this night. But first, I wish to speak with Perkins, the butler. He sees all, yet says little. A man in his position, he knows the secrets of this house." As they returned to the manor, Hastings felt the weight of the mystery pressing down. The blood, the note, the empty safe each was a piece of a puzzle that refused to fit. But, with Poirot's mind at work, Hastings knew the truth was only a matter of time. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings, the morning mist, had burned away, leaving Greystone Manor bathed in the pale, unforgiving light of a late summer sun. The atmosphere within the house was taut, as though the very walls held their breath, waiting for the next revelation. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating quiet authority, had summoned Perkins, the butler, to the library, a room less grand than the drawing room, but no less oppressive, its shelves heavy with dusty tomes and the air thick with the scent of old paper. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the window, watching the ripples on the lake beyond, his mind still turning over the bloodstain in the boathouse and the cryptic note found in Sir Reginald's study. Perkins entered, his stooped figure moving with the practiced deference of a man who had served the Ashford family for decades. His face, lined and pale, betrayed no emotion, but his hands, clasped before him, trembled slightly. Poirot, seated at a small writing desk, gestured for the butler to sit, though Perkins remained standing, as though rooted to the floor by protocol. "Monsieur Perkins," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding. "You are the eyes and ears of Greystone Manor. Nothing happens in this house without your knowledge. N'est-ce pas?" Perkins inclined his head, his voice low. "I do my best to serve, sir, but I'm no spy. I see what's in front of me, nothing more." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign Hastings recognized as the detective's amusement at an evasion. "Yet, you saw Sir Reginald last night, did you not?" Before he vanished, Perkins hesitated, his eyes flicking to the floor. "I brought him a brandy in the study, just after 9. He was at his desk, writing. He seemed agitated. Told me to leave the tray and go." "Writing," Poirot repeated, leaning forward. "The note, perhaps. I must go. Forgive me. Did you see it?" "Sir," Perkins said quickly. "He was writing in his ledger, I think. Papers were scattered about. He waved me off before I could see more." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "In the safe. Was it open when you left?" Perkins shook his head. "I couldn't say, sir. The portrait covers it, and I didn't look behind." Poirot nodded, dismissing the butler with a wave. As Perkins retreated, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. "He knows more, mon ami. His hesitation, it betrays him. But we shall return to him later. For now, we have other threads to pull." The morning's interrogations had planted seeds of doubt in Hastings' mind. Tay and Poirot's relentless probing had only deepened the sense of unease. The guests' alibis, so neatly aligned, felt like a carefully rehearsed performance, and the blood in the boathouse loomed as a grim reminder that this was no mere disappearance. Poirot, however, seemed energized by the complexity, his mind already sifting through the tangle of motives and opportunities. Their next move was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Inspector Davies, a local policeman with a weathered face and a no-nonsense demeanor, had arrived, summoned by Lady Beatrice, despite Poirot's earlier caution against involving the authorities. Davies, a man of middle years with a thick mustache and a penchant for straightforward solutions, strode into the drawing room where the guests had reconvened. His presence seemed to shrink the room, his heavy boots leaving faint traces of mud on the carpet. "Monsieur Poirot," Davies said, his tone gruff but respectful. "I've heard of your reputation. Oh, this is a local matter, and I'll thank you to let me handle it. Now, what's this about Sir Reginald Ashford going missing?" Poirot's smile was polite, but his eyes were sharp. "Inspector, I am merely a guest, assisting where I can. Sir Reginald has vanished, leaving a note, an empty safe, and a stain of blood in the boathouse. I trust you will find these facts stimulating." Davies' eyes narrowed, but he turned to the guests, his notebook already open. "Right then. I'll start with you, Lady Beatrice. When did you last see your husband?" Lady Beatrice, her composure strained but intact, repeated her account. Sir Reginald had excused himself after dinner, and she had found the note in his study. Davies scribbled furiously, his questions blunt and to the point. "And this safe anything valuable in it?" "The will," she said, her voice tight. "Some letters. I don't know what they contained." Davies grunted, his attention shifting to Julian Trent, whose easy charm seemed to irritate the inspector. "You, sir, a stranger here, aren't you? Bit convenient, showing up just as the master of the house disappears." Trent's smile didn't waver. "Pure coincidence, Inspector. Sir Reginald invited me, and I came. I was in the drawing room all evening. Ask anyone." Davies' questions continued, each guest reiterating their alibis with a monotony that made Hastings uneasy. Inspector, clearly favoring a simple explanation, seemed to fixate on Trent as the outsider, his questions growing sharper. "You've no business here, no ties to the family. What's your game, eh? Did you see Sir Reginald leave?" Trent's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. "I saw nothing, Inspector. I was charming the ladies, not skulking about." Standing quietly to one side, watched the exchange with keen interest. Hastings could almost see the gears turning in his friend's mind, noting every inflection, every glance. When Davies paused to confer with the constable who had arrived to report on the boathouse, Poirot drew Hastings aside. "Mon ami," he whispered. "The inspector, okay? He sees what is obvious, friend. The stranger, the easy suspect. But this is a red herring, I think. The truth lies deeper in the hearts of those closest to Sir Reginald." Hastings frowned. "But Trent's alibi is shaky. He stayed behind when we searched the house. He could have slipped out." Poirot agreed. "But so could any of them. The alibis, they are too perfect, like a script. And this blooded is not enough for murder, yet enough to alarm. It is a distraction, perhaps, to lead us away from the true crime." Before Hastings could respond, Davies returned, his face grim. "We've searched the boathouse again. Found a scrap of cloth caught on a nail-blue wool. Looks like it's from a jacket. Any of you gentlemen missing a piece of your wardrobe?" The guests exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Davies, undeterred, pressed on, his suspicion now broadening to include Victor Langston, whose financial dealings with Sir Reginald made him another convenient target. "You knew about his debts, didn't you?" Davies said, his voice accusing. "Maybe you helped yourself to that will, eh?" Langston's face remained impassive. "I had no need to steal, Inspector. My business with Sir Reginald was above board." Poirot, sensing the inspector's focus narrowing, stepped forward. "Inspector, might I suggest a closer examination of the grounds? The lake, in particular? The note found in the study meet me at midnight by the lake. It suggests a rendezvous, perhaps connected to the blood. Davies hesitated, clearly reluctant to follow Poirot's lead, but he nodded. Right, we'll drag the lake. See if there's anything or anyone down there. As the inspector and his constable departed, Poirot turned to Hastings, his eyes gleaming. The lake, mon ami, it is the heart of this mystery. But not for a body, I think. Something else was hidden there, something worth bleeding for. Hastings felt a chill. You think Sir Reginald's alive? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. I think, Hastings, that someone wishes us to believe he is not. But the little gray cells, they tell me otherwise. Come, we must observe the guests. One of them will betray themselves before long. As they returned to the drawing room, Hastings caught Clara Henshaw watching them, her eyes sharp with something that might have been fear or calculation. Red Herrings, as Poirot had called them, were multiplying, but the truth remained just out of reach. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. The midday sun hung low over Greystone Manor, casting long shadows across the lawn and glinting off the still waters of the lake. The police, under Inspector Davies' brusque direction, had begun dragging the lake, their boats cutting slow, methodical paths through the water. The guests, confined to the manor by Poirot's request and the inspector's orders, paced the drawing room or lingered in the corridors, their nerves frayed by the relentless ticking of the grandfather clock. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the library window, watching the boats, his mind churning with the fragments of the mystery, the blood in the boathouse, cryptic note, the empty safe, and now the scrap of blue wool found by the police. Hercule Poirot, seated at a small table in the library, was examining the splinter and grease smear he had collected from the boathouse, its magnifying glass catching the light as he turned the evidence over in his gloved hands. His expression was one of intense concentration, his mustache quivering slightly as he murmured to himself in French. Hastings, accustomed to his friend's methods, knew better than to interrupt. But the weight of the unanswered questions pressed heavily upon him. Poirot, Hastings ventured at last. Key sits mechanical, you said. Could it be from a car? Or perhaps a tool used to force the safe? Poirot set down the magnifying glass, his eyes gleaming. Nan, mon ami, it is not from a car, nor a tool for a safe. It is too fine, too specific. I suspect it is from a typewriter, perhaps, or a small machine. But its presence in the boathouse, with the blood in the footprint, it is a clue most particular. Q. It tells us that something was done there, something precise. Hastings frowned, trying to follow Poirot's logic. But what? Sir Reginald was there? Why the grease? And why only a little blood? Poirot leaned back, steepling his fingers. The blood, it is not enough for murder, yet it is enough to suggest violence or to make us believe in violence. The grease, it suggests a machine, a process, and the footprint, to clear, to perfect. It is as though someone wishes us to follow a path they have laid. Before Hastings could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. Clara Henshaw stood in the doorway, her auburn curls neatly pinned, but her eyes shadowed with unease. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice low, I need to speak with you, alone. Poirot raised an eyebrow, but gestured for her to enter. Mademoiselle, you have my attention. Speak freely. Clara glanced at Hastings, who hesitated before stepping into the corridor, closing the door behind him. Through the heavy oak, he could hear only murmurs, but he trusted Poirot to share what was necessary. Instead, he wandered toward the drawing room, where he found Evelyn Warrender seated alone, her hands twisting her ever-present handkerchief. Captain Hastings, she said, her voice trembling. Is there any news? The lake have they found him? Hastings shook his head, offering a reassuring smile. Not yet, Mrs. Warrender. The police are thorough, but Poirot. He's certain there's more to this than meets the eye. Her eyes filled with tears. I knew something was wrong. That figure, I said, wasn't my imagination. It was real, Captain. I feel it. Hastings nodded, his mind returning to her earlier claim. Can you describe it again? Anything specific? Clothing? Movement? She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the handkerchief. It was dark, but I think he wore a hat, a wide-brimmed one. He moved quickly, almost running, toward the lake. I couldn't see his face. Hastings made a mental note, wondering if the figure could be linked to the blue wool or the boathouse evidence. Before he could press further, Poirot emerged from the library, Clara trailing behind him. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing as she hurried past. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low. Mlle. Henshaw has shared something most illuminating. But first, we must return to the study. There is a detail I overlooked, a detail that may change everything. They made their way to Sir Reginald's study, where the air still carried the faint scent of pipe tobacco. Poirot moved to the desk, his eyes scanning the surface with renewed intensity. He paused at the silver cigarette case, which he had noted earlier as curious for a pipe smoker. Opening it, he examined the cigarettes closely, then removed one and held it to the light. Regardless, Hastings, he said, his voice tinged with excitement. This cigarette is not like the others. See the faint discoloration at the tip and the smell. He held it to his nose, his eyes narrowing. It is not tobacco alone. There is something else, a chemical, perhaps. Hastings leaned in, catching a faint, acrid scent. Poison, perhaps, Poirot said, carefully placing the cigarette in an envelope. But why hide it in plain sight? And why only one? This is no accident, mon ami. It is a clue left for us to find door to mislead us. Poirot's attention shifted to the desk's drawers, which he had not yet thoroughly examined. He opened the top drawer, revealing a small, locked diary. With a deft movement, he produced a thin tool from his pocket and picked the lock, revealing pages filled with Sir Reginald's angular handwriting. Poirot skimmed the entries, his eyes moving rapidly. Listen, Hastings, he said, reading aloud. March 12th. B grows reckless. I cannot allow it to continue. And here, April 3rd. The letters must be destroyed, but not yet. They are my leverage. B, Hastings said, his pulse quickening. Beatrice again. Or another, Poirot replied, closing the diary. But this confirms what I suspected. Sir Reginald was entangled in something dangerous, something tied to those letters in the safe. In this diary, he tapped it thoughtfully. It was hidden, yet not too well. Another clue, perhaps, or another distraction. Their discussion was interrupted by a shout from outside. Hastings rushed to the window, seeing Inspector Davies waving from the lake's edge. Poirot joined him, and they hurried down to the shore, where the police had pulled something from the water-ran man's shoe, size 10, its tread matching the footprint in the boathouse. Davies held it up, his face grim. It's Sir Reginald's, I'd wager. His initials are embossed inside. Like he was in the lake, after all. Poirot examined the shoe, his expression unreadable. And yet, Inspector, there is no body. A shoe, a footprint, a drop of blood. These are pieces, but not the whole. I urge you to continue searching, but I suspect the lake holds no more answers. Davies grunted, clearly skeptical, but returned. To his men, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. The shoe, it is too convenient. It matches the footprint exactly, yet it is clean, save for the water. No mud, no wear. It was placed there, mon ami, to keep us looking in the wrong direction. Hastings felt a chill. Then where is Sir Reginald, and what's the real crime? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The crime, Hastings, is not what it seems. The blood, the shoe, the note, they are threads in a web, woven to distract. But the diary, the cigarette, the grease, these are the true clues. Someone in this house knows more than they say, and I, Hercule Poirot, will find them out. As they returned to the manor, Hastings glanced back at the lake, its surface now still, reflecting the darkening sky. The mystery was deepening, and with every clue, the truth seemed to slip further away. But Poirot's certainty was unshakable, and Hastings knew that the little Belgian's mind was already closing in on the heart of the matter. Chapter 7. More lies surfaced. The late afternoon light filtered through the heavy curtains of Greystone Manor, casting a muted glow over the drawing room where the guests had once again gathered. The air was thick with tension, each person seated, as if on the edge of a precipice, their eyes darting between one another and the small, immaculate figure of Hercule Poirot, who stood before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. Captain Arthur Hastings, positioned near the door, felt the weight of the mystery pressing down like a storm cloud. The discovery of Sir Reginald's shoe in the lake, coupled with the cryptic diary entries and the suspicious cigarette, had only deepened the enigma. The manor, once a haven of elegance, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in with every unanswered question. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each guest with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Lady Beatrice sat rigidly, her fan lying unused in her lap, her face a mask of controlled anxiety. Clara Henshaw, her sharp wit subdued, toyed with a strand of her auburn hair, her eyes flickering with something that might have been guilt. Dr. Lionel Warrender and his wife, Evelyn, sat close together, though their clasped hands seemed more a gesture of necessity than affection. Victor Langston, the solicitor, maintained his stoic demeanor. His fingers drummed a silent rhythm on the arm of his chair. Julian Trent, ever the outsider, lounged with an air of detachment, though his smile was less assured than before. Mies. Amos, Poirot began, his voice cutting through the silence like a bell. The threads of this mystery grow ever more tangled, but the little grey cells, they are not deceived. Sir Reginald Ashford has vanished, leaving behind a note, a stain of blood, a shoe, and an empty safe. But these are not the only secrets in this house. There are lies of omission, lies of motive, lies of the heart. Today we shall uncover some of these truths. A murmur rippled through the room, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing it. Let us begin with a question. Who among you knew of Sir Reginald's financial troubles? The guests froze, their faces betraying varying degrees of surprise or discomfort. Victor Langston was the first to speak, his voice steady but guarded. As his solicitor, I was aware of certain difficulties. Vestments gone awry, creditors pressing. But Sir Reginald was managing. He always did. Managing. Clara's voice was sharp, her eyes flashing. He was drowning, Mr. Langston, and you know it? I overheard him arguing with you last month, something about a loan he couldn't repay. He was furious, said you'd betrayed his trust. Langston's face darkened, but he maintained his composure. You misheard, Miss Henshaw. Sir Reginald was upset. Yes, but it was about a business deal, not a betrayal. I advised him to sell assets, but he refused. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And you, Mademoiselle Henshaw, why did you not mention this argument before? Clara hesitated, her cheeks flushing. I didn't think it mattered. Uncle Reginald was always arguing with some creditors, suppliers, even Beatrice. It was just his way. Lady Beatrice's head snapped up, her voice icy. How dare you, Clara? Reginald and I were perfectly happy. If he was troubled, it was because of people like you, always prying into his affairs. Clara's lips curled into a smirk. Happy? You barely spoke to him, Beatrice. I saw you with Mr. Trent, at dinner, laughing, touching his arm. If anyone was betraying trust, it was you. The room erupted into gasps. Lady Beatrice's face went white, her fan snapping, open as though to shield her from the accusation. Julian Trent leaned forward, his smile gone. Kill. Miss Henshaw, that's unfair. Lady Beatrice was kind enough to entertain a guest. There's no need to twist it into something sordid. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. Enough. These accusations, they reveal much. But let us turn to another matter. Letters in the safe. Madame Ashford, you claimed ignorance of their contents, yet I suspect you know more than you say. Lady Beatrice's eyes widened, but she shook her head. I told you, Monsieur Poirot, they were old, private. Reginald never shared them with me. Poirot's smile was faint, almost pitying. And yet, in his diary, Sir Reginald wrote of leveraged letters that held power. Power over whom, I wonder? His gaze shifted to Dr. Warrender, whose face had grown pale. Doctor, you were close to Sir Reginald. Did he ever speak of these letters? Warrender cleared his throat, his hands tightening around his wife's. Never. I treated his health, not his secrets. If he had letters, they were none of my concern. Evelyn Warrender's voice trembled as she spoke, unprompted. It's not true. Lionel, you knew something. I heard you and Reginald talking. Last week, in the garden. You were angry, said he was playing a dangerous game. Warrender's face flushed, and he turned on his wife, his voice low but sharp. Evelyn, be quiet. You don't know what you heard. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice soft but piercing. Madame Warrender, what exactly did you hear? Evelyn hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. It was late, after dinner. I was walking near the rose garden, and I heard them. Reginald said something about keeping it buried, and Lionel said, you can't hold this over me forever. I didn't understand, but Lionel was so angry. I've never seen him like that. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling like dust. Warrender's face was ashen, but he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot nodded, as though a piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. Merci, madame. Your honesty is most illuminating. Hastings, watching from the doorway, felt a surge of excitement. The cracks in the guests' stories were widening, revealing glimpses of hidden motives, debts, betrayals, secrets held in, letters. But before Poirot could press further, Inspector Davies entered, his face grim. Monsieur Poirot, he said, holding up a small, sealed envelope. We found this in the lake, caught in the reeds. It's addressed to Sir Reginald. Poirot took the envelope, his gloved fingers careful not to smudge it. The paper was damp, but intact, the ink slightly blurred, but legible. Bore no signature, only a single line. The past will find you. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he opened it, revealing a single sheet of paper with a typed message. You cannot hide forever. What you owe, or the truth will out. The guests leaned forward, their curiosity overriding their fear. Poirot held up the letter, his voice calm but commanding. This is no coincidence, Mies Amos. Someone wished Sir Reginald to fear, to flee, or to be silenced. The question is, who? Gavious, impatient, interjected. It's blackmail, plain as day, and I'd wager our friend Mr. Trent knows more than he's letting on. He's got no business here, no ties perfect for stirring up trouble. Trent's smile returned, but it was strained. Inspector, you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm just a guest, nothing more. Poirot's gaze lingered on Trent, then shifted to the others. The letter, it is typed, perhaps on a machine that leaves a trace of grease, Nan. In the envelope, it is placed where it would be found. Another thread, leading us deeper into the web. Davies left to continue the search. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, The lies multiply, but so do the clues. The diary, the cigarette, the grease. Now, this letter, they point to a truth buried in the past. But whose past? And what price was Sir Reginald paying? Hastings felt the mystery tightening around him. Each revelation a step closer to the truth, and yet a step deeper into danger. Poirot's eyes, however, were alight with determination. And Hastings knew that the little Belgian was closing in on the heart of the matter, one lie at a time. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. The air in Greystone Manor's drawing room was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, as though the very walls were weary of the secrets they held. The late afternoon light had faded to a somber gray, and the guests, gathered once more at Hercule Poirot's insistence, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The discovery of the typed letter in the lake, "The past will find you," had cast a shadow over the house, its cryptic threat amplifying the sense of dread that had settled since Sir Reginald Ashford's disappearance. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the tall windows, felt his pulse quicken as he watched Poirot, whose small, neat figure seemed to command the room with an almost palpable intensity. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning the assembled company. Lady Beatrice, her elegance fraying at the edges. Clara Henshaw, her sharp wit dulled by suspicion. Dr. Lionel Warrender, his professional calm cracking under pressure. Evelyn Warrender, her handkerchief a crumpled testament to her nerves. Victor Langston, the solicitor, his stoic mask barely concealing his unease. And Julian Trent, whose charm now seemed a thin veneer over something darker. Inspector Davies, hovering near the door with his constable, scribbled notes, his impatience evident in the tap of his foot. "Mies, Amos," Poirot began, his voice soft but resonant. "We stand at a crossroads in this affair. Sir Reginald Ashford is going perhaps by his own hand, perhaps by another's. A note speaks of forgiveness, a safe lies empty, blood stains the boathouse, and a letter warns of the past. But it is not these clues alone that will lead us to the truth. It is the human heart, the passions, the fears, the betrayals that will unlock this mystery." His words hung in the air, and Hastings saw the guests shift uncomfortably. Lady Beatrice's fan snapped shut, her lips parting as though to protest, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "Madame Ashford," he said, his tone gentle but firm, "you have told us little of your marriage. Yet Sir Reginald's diary speaks of being growing reckless, of letters as leverage. I ask you now, before all, what did he fear from you?" Lady Beatrice's face went white, her hands trembling. "How dare you, Monsieur Poirot? Reginald and I were devoted. If he wrote of me, it was his own paranoia. He was troubled, yes, but not because of me." Clara Henshaw's voice cut through, sharp and accusing. "Devoted? You were flirting with Mr. Trent at dinner, Beatrice, okay? And I saw you in the garden with him 2 nights ago, whispering like schoolgirls. What was that about, if not betrayal?" The room gasped, and Trent's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "Henshaw, you're mistaken. Lady Beatrice and I were discussing art, nothing more. You're seeing shadows where there are none." Poirot's gaze flicked between them, his expression unreadable. And yet, shadows often conceal the truth. "Monsieur Trent, you claim to be a stranger, invited on a whim. But Sir Reginald was not a man of whims. Why were you truly here?" Trent leaned back, his nonchalance strained. "I told you," he liked, "my company. I'm a free spirit, Monsieur Poirot. I go where I'm invited." Poirot's smile was faint, almost pitying. "A free spirit with a typewriter, perhaps?" The letter from the Lycett was typed, with traces of grease, like that found in the boathouse. A coincidence? None? Trent's face hardened, but before he could respond, Evelyn Warrender stood, her voice breaking the tense silence. "Stop it, all of you. I can't bear this anymore." Handkerchief fell to the floor, and she clutched her husband's arm, tears streaming down her face. "Lionel, tell them about the letters, about what you did. I can't keep lying for you." The room froze, every eye on Dr. Warrender. His face, already pale, turned ashen, and his hands shook as he tried to calm his wife. "Evelyn, please," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You don't know what you're saying." But Evelyn pulled away, her voice rising. "I know enough. I heard you and Reginald in the garden, arguing about those letters. You said he was ruining you, that you'd do anything to stop him. And now he's gone, and there's blood, and I'm terrified, Lionel." Warrender's composure shattered, his voice cracking as he turned to Poirot. "It's not what she thinks. Yes, I argued with Reginald, but it wasn't about murder. It was personal. Those letters in the safe, they were mine from years. Code letters I wrote to someone else before Evelyn. Reginald found them, kept them to control me. He threatened to expose me, to ruin my reputation, my marriage." The confession hung in the air, a raw wound laid bare. Evelyn sobbed, her hands covering her face, while the other guests stared, their expressions a mix of shock and suspicion. Hastings, his heart pounding, glanced at Poirot, whose eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a hunter closing in on his. "Pray, mercy," Dr. Poirot said, his voice calm. "This is most illuminating. You were blackmailed, then, by Sir Reginald. A motive, perhaps, to wish him gone." Warrender shook his head frantically. "I didn't harm him, I swear. I begged him to destroy the letters, but he refused. That night, after dinner, I went to the study to plead with him again. He was alive when I left, and the safe," Poirot pressed. "Did you open it?" "No." Warrender's voice was desperate. "It was closed when I was there. I left him at his desk, writing. That's all." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to the others. "A confession, Mies Amos, but not the whole truth. The letters, they are the key to this puzzle, but they are not the only secret. Someone else in this room knows more, someone who typed that letter, someone who left blood in the boathouse." Lady Beatrice's voice trembled as she spoke. "You're accusing us all, Monsieur Poirot. But what about you, Clara? You were always sneaking around, listening at doors. Did you take the letters? Did you do something to Reginald?" Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice was steady. "I didn't touch him, Beatrice. But I'll tell you, this sigh saw you leave the drawing room after coffee, before you found that note." "Where were you?" Lady Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "I went to the powder room, as I told you." "Dare you imply enough?" Poirot's voice cut through the rising tension, sharp and commanding. "The accusations, they fly like arrows, but they do not yet strike the target. I, Hercule Poirot, see the shape of this crime, but one piece remains missing. We shall reconvene this evening, and I will lay a trap for the truth." As the guests dispersed, their faces a mix of fear and defiance, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. "Mon ami, the heart of this mystery beats in those letters. Warrender has broken, but he is not the only one with a secret. Tonight we shall see who else trembles when the light of truth is shone upon them." Hastings nodded, his mind racing. The confession had cracked the facade of the Manor's polite society. But the truth, whether Sir Reginald was alive or dead, victim or orchestrator, remained just out of reach. As the clock struck 5, its chimes echoing through the silent house, Hastings felt the weight of the coming confrontation and the certainty that Poirot's trap would change everything. Chapter 9. The trap. The evening had settled over Greystone Manor like a shroud, the sky bruised with clouds that promised rain. The drawing room, lit by the soft glow of lamps and the flickering fire, was a stage set for confrontation. Hercule Poirot had summoned the guests once more, their faces drawn and tense as they took their places in the semicircle of chairs. The air was thick with anticipation, each person aware that the little Belgian detective was closing in on the truth. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the door, his heart pounding, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of weakness among the suspects. Dr. Warrendour's confession had cracked the veneer of civility, and now Poirot's promised trap loomed over them all. Poirot stood before the fireplace, small frame radiating an almost theatrical authority. In his hands he held the silver cigarette case from Sir Reginald's study, its polished surface catching the light. The guest, Lady Beatrice, Clara Henshaw, Dr. Lionel Warrender, Ada Langston, and Julian Trent watched him with a mix of dread and curiosity. Inspector Davies, stationed by the window with his constable, scribbled notes, his skepticism of Poirot's methods evident in his furrowed brow. "Me same as," Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. "We have reached the moment where the threads of this mystery must be woven together. Sir Reginald Ashford is gone, leaving behind a note, a stain of blood, a shoe, an empty safe, and a letter from the lake. But these are not the heart of the matter. The heart lies in the secrets of this house, secrets of debt, of betrayal, of the past. Tonight, I, Hercule Poirot, shall lay a trap to catch the truth." He held up the cigarette case, turning it slowly. "This, a simple object, holds a clue most vital." One cigarette, laced with the chemical scent, was placed among ordinary tobacco. Why? To poison, to distract, or to point us toward the one who placed it there. Lady Beatrice's fan trembled in her hands, her voice sharp. "Monsieur Poirot, you speak in riddles. If you know something, say it plainly." Poirot's smile was faint, his eyes never leaving hers. "Patience, madame. It's the truth. It reveals itself in its own time. Let us consider the facts. Sir Reginald was troubled by debts, by letters, by those around him. His diary speaks of B being reckless, of letters as leverage. Dr. Warrender has admitted to being blackmailed with letters from his past, but there is more. Someone typed a threatening note, left it in the lake. Someone left blood in the boathouse, a shoe in the water, a footprint in the dust. These are not accidents. They are a performance designed to mislead." Clara Henshaw leaned forward, her eyes flashing. "A performance? You think someone staged all this? For what?" Poirot's gaze shifted to her. "For control, mademoiselle. For power. Or perhaps for freedom. Let us test this theory." He turned to the butler Perkins, who stood silently in the corner. "Monsieur Perkins, you served Sir Reginald his brandy in the study at 9 o'clock. You saw him writing. Did you see anyone else near the study that night?" Perkins hesitated, his hands clasping and unclasping. "No, sir. The corridor was empty. I left him and returned to the kitchen." Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. "And yet, someone entered that study. Someone opened the safe, took the will and letters, and left a note. Someone was in the boathouse, leaving blood and grease. I propose a simple experiment." He turned to the group, his voice rising slightly. "I have asked Inspector Davies to search your rooms this afternoon. In one, we found something most interesting, a typewriter, its ribbon stained with grease, matching that in the boathouse." A gasp rippled through the room. Julian Trent's smile vanished, his body tensing. "You searched our rooms?" asked in outrage. Poirot ignored him, his gaze fixed on Victor Langston. "Monsieur Langston, the typewriter was found in your room, hidden beneath a pile of legal papers. Care to explain?" Langston's face remained impassive, but his fingers stopped their drumming. "I use a typewriter for my work, Monsieur Poirot. It's hardly a crime. As for grease, I know nothing of it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Can yet, the ribbon matches the letter from the lake. The grease matches the smear in the boathouse. And you, monsieur, knew of Sir Reginald's debts that threatened to ruin him. Did you help him flee, or did you ensure he would not return? Langston's voice was cold. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. I had no reason to harm him. My livelihood depended on his success. Before Poirot could press further, Evelyn Warrender stood, her voice trembling but resolute. Stop it. I can't bear this anymore. Monsieur Poirot, you're right, someone's lying. But it's not just Victor. I saw something else that night. Something I didn't tell you. She glanced at her husband, her eyes filled with tears. It was you, Lionel. I saw you leave the library after dinner, heading toward the study. You were carrying something, a small box, wrapped in cloth. You looked guilty. Dr. Warrender's face crumpled, his hands rising as if to ward off her words. Evelyn. No, I didn't. I wasn't. He stopped, his shoulders sagging. It wasn't what you think. I went to the study to confront Reginald about the letters. I took a medical case with me sedatives in case he was unwell. Dead, but he was alive. When I left, I swear, Poirot's voice was soft, almost coaxing. In the box, doctor, what was in it? Warrender's eyes darted around the room, seeking an escape. Just medical supplies. Nothing more. Poirot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner. You lie. Doctor, the box. It was not for medicine. It was for the letters, was it not? You took them from the safe to free yourself from his blackmail. But something went wrong. We struggle, perhaps, in the boathouse? Warrender shook his head frantically, but his voice was barely audible. No struggle. I didn't touch him. The room was silent, the tension unbearable. Poirot turned to the others, his gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. One of you knows what happened in that boathouse. One of you typed that letter, leapt that shoe, spilled that blood. And I, Hercule Poirot, will not rest until the truth is revealed. Tonight, I ask you to reflect. Okay, tomorrow we shall gather again, and the trap will close. As the guests dispersed, their faces pale and haunted, Hastings approached Poirot, his voice low. You're pushing them hard, Poirot. Warrender's cracking, and Langston's hiding something. What's the trap? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The trap, mon ami, is the mind. I have planted a seed of fear in the guilty one. They will act, they will slip, and we shall be watching. The typewriter, the grease, the letters, they point to a truth, but it is the heart that will betray the culprit. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, pattering against the windows like the footsteps of an unseen presence. Hastings felt a chill, knowing that the night would bring no peace to Greystone Manor. The trap was set, and the truth was closer than ever, but at what cost? Chapter 10. The reveal. The rain that had begun the previous evening had turned into a steady downpour, drumming against the windows of Greystone Manor and casting a somber pall over the drawing room. The guests, summoned by Hercule Poirot for what he had promised would be the final gathering, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces pale and drawn. The air was heavy with the weight of secrets exposed and accusations unanswered. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the fireplace, his heart pounding as he watched Poirot, whose small, immaculate figure commanded the room with an authority that belied his stature. The detective's eyes gleamed with the certainty of a man who had unraveled the knot of a complex puzzle. And Hastings knew that the moment of truth had arrived. Inspector Davies, flanked by his constable, stood by the door, his notebook open, but his expression one of grudging respect. The discoveries of the past day, the typewriter in Victor Langston's room, Dr. Warrender's confession about the letters, Evelyn's sighting of her husband with the mysterious box, had shifted the investigation, but the absence of Sir Reginald Ashford, dead or alive, remained the central enigma. Poirot, holding the silver cigarette case and the damp letter from the lake, stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant. Mies, Amos, he began, his tone measured but commanding. We have journeyed through a labyrinth of lies, red herrings, and half-truths. Sir Reginald Ashford has vanished, leaving behind a note, a stain of blood, a shoe, an empty safe, and a letter warning of the past. But these are not mere clues. They are the threads of a tapestry woven by a mind most cunning. Tonight, I, Hercule Poirot, will reveal the truth of what happened in this house. The guests leaned forward, their eyes fixed on Poirot. Lady Beatrice clutched her fan, her face a mask of strained composure. Clara Henshaw's sharp gaze flickered with anticipation, while Dr. Lionel Warrender sat rigidly, his wife, Evelyn, trembling beside him. Victor Langston's stoic facade showed cracks, his fingers gripping the arm of his chair. Julian Trent, his usual charm replaced by wariness, watched Poirot with narrowed eyes. "Let us begin with the facts," Poirot said, holding up the note from the study. "I must go. Forgive me. This note, written in Sir Reginald's hand, suggests a man fleeing in distress. But the desk, it was too tidy, no ink smudges, no haste. This was not the act of a man in panic, but a performance, staged to deceive." He turned to the cigarette case, opening it to reveal the single tainted cigarette. This, a cigarette laced with a chemical, was placed among ordinary ones. High, to suggest poison, perhaps, or to point to a culprit, but it was never used in another distraction. Poirot's gaze shifted to the letter from the lake. "The past will find you," typed with grease matching that in the boathouse, and a typewriter found in Monsieur Langston's room. A damning clue. Oui. But too damning, too convenient. Langston's voice was sharp. "I told you, Poirot, the typewriter is for my work. I had no part in this." Poirot's smile was faint. "Patience, monsieur. Let us proceed, step by step. The blood in the boathouse, the shoe in the lake, the footprint, they are all part of the same performance. The blood, not enough for murder, was spilled deliberately. The shoe, clean and unmarred, was placed in the water. The footprint, too perfect, was left to be found. Someone wished us to believe Sir Reginald met with foul play, perhaps, to hide a greater truth." He turned to Dr. Warrender, whose face was ashen. "Doctor, you admitted to being blackmailed by Sir Reginald with letters from your past letters written to another before your marriage. You went to the study that night, carrying a box. You claimed it held medical supplies, but I suspect it held something else, perhaps the letters you sought to reclaim." Warrender shook his head, his voice hoarse. "I didn't take them. Reginald was alive when I left." Poirot nodded, his eyes moving to Lady Beatrice. "Madame, you claimed ignorance of the letters, yet Sir Reginald's diary speaks of being reckless. You were seen with Monsieur Trent, whispering in the garden, laughing at dinner. Were you, perhaps, seeking to escape your husband's control?" Lady Beatrice's fan snapped shut, her voice trembling. "I loved Reginald. Would never harm him." Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. "And yet, someone did. Let us consider the sequence of events. So Reginald was last seen at 9 in his study. By 10, he was gone, the note left behind. The safe was opened without force, suggesting someone knew the combination. The letters and will were taken, and blood was spilled in the boathouse. But there is one detail that does not fit the grease." He held up the envelope containing the splinter from the boathouse. "This grease, found with the splinter of wood, is from a typewriter. But not just any typewriter. It is from a specific machine, one used to type the letter found in the lake. And that machine, Mies Amos, is not in Monsieur Langston's room. It is in the attic, hidden among old furniture, where someone thought it would not be found." A murmur ran through the room. Clara's eyes widened, ascendancy widened. Attack. You mean we, Mademoiselle Poirot, interrupted? And there is more. The ribbon of that typewriter bears the same grease found in the boathouse. But who used it? Who knew the combination to the safe? Who had motive to make Sir Reginald disappear? He turned to Julian Trent, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner. Monsieur Trent, you are not the stranger you claim. You were invited here for a purpose not by Sir Reginald, but by another. You are no wanderer, but a man with a past, a man who owed Sir Reginald a debt of shame, perhaps, tied to those letters. Trent's face paled, his hands clenching. You're mad, Poirot. I barely knew him. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But you knew someone else in this house, someone who conspired with you, someone who typed the letter, spilled the blood, placed the shoe, and that someone is you, Madame Ashford. The room gasped. Lady Beatrice stood, her face white. This is preposterous. I would never. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. You were reckless, as the diary said. You had an affair, years ago, with a man whose letters Sir Reginald kept as leverage. Those letters could have ruined you, exposed to your shame. You conspired with Monsieur Trent, your former lover, to stage Sir Reginald's disappearance. You opened the safe, took the letters and will, and together you created a sign blood from a small cut, a shoe from his wardrobe, a note in his hand, dictated by you. Sir Reginald is not dead. Mies Amis. He is hidden in London, under duress, believing his debts will destroy him unless he complies. Lady Beatrice's fan fell to the floor, her voice a whisper. How? How could you know? Poirot's smile was triumphant. The little grey cells, madame. The diary spoke of B. In leverage, the typewriter, hidden by you, bore your fingerprints. The grease linked the letter to the boathouse, where you and Trent staged the scene. And Perkins, the butler, saw you near the study, not the powder room. You convinced Sir Reginald to flee, to protect his reputation, while you planned to secure the estate to end your freedom. Trent lunged forward, but Davy's constable restrained him. Lady Beatrice collapsed into her chair, sobbing. It was for love, she whispered, for a life free of his control. Poirot nodded, his voice soft. A sad sacrifice, madame. But the truth, it always finds its way. As Davies moved to arrest him, Hastings felt a mix of awe and sorrow. Poirot had unraveled the web, but the cost of truth was heavy indeed. Chapter 11. The reflection, the rain had ceased, leaving Greystone Manor cloaked in a damp, mournful silence. The drawing-room, so recently a stage for Poirot's dramatic revelation, now felt hollow, its grandeur diminished by the weight of truth. Lady Beatrice Ashford and Julian Trent had been taken into custody by Inspector Davies, their faces pale and defiant as they were led away. The remaining guests, Clara Henshaw, Dr. Lionel Warrender, Evelyn Warrender, and Victor Langston sat in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on the floor or the flickering fire, as though unwilling to meet the gaze of Hercule Poirot, who stood before the hearth, his small frame radiating a quiet solemnity. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near the window, felt a complex mix of emotions for Poirot's brilliance, sorrow for the shattered lives, and a lingering unease that the full truth might still elude them. The revelation that Sir Reginald Ashford was alive, hidden in London under duress, had been a shock. But it was Lady Beatrice's confession, wrung from her by Poirot's relentless logic, that lingered like a wound. Her desperate bid for freedom, orchestrated with Trent, had unraveled the fragile bonds of Greystone Manor, exposing a web of betrayal and fear. Poirot, his hands clasped behind his back, addressed the room, his voice soft but resonant. Mies Amis, the case of Sir Reginald Ashford is resolved, yet it leaves us with much to ponder. The human heart, It is a labyrinth of passion and deceit, and in this house we have seen its darkest corners. Lady Beatrice sought to escape her husband's control, to reclaim a life she felt stolen from her. Monsieur Trent, bound by a past debt and a rekindled love, became her accomplice. Together they staged a disappearance plot, a shoe, a note to convince us Sir Reginald was dead or fled, while they hid him, coerced by threats to his reputation. Clara Henshaw, her sharp wit softened by the ordeal, spoke first, her voice low. But why, Monsieur Poirot? Why go to such lengths? If Beatrice wanted freedom, she could have left him. Poirot's eyes gleamed with a touch of melancholy. Mademoiselle, it is not so simple. Sir Reginald held power, not just through wealth, but through secrets. The letters in the safe, they were not only Dr. Warrender's, but also hers, written to Monsieur Trent years ago. Exposure would have ruined her in society's eyes, and the will, by securing it, she ensured her inheritance should Sir Reginald never return. It was a plan most cunning, but flawed, for it underestimated the little gray cells. Dr. Warrender, his face haggard, looked up, his voice barely audible. And the letters about me, will they come out? Poirot's expression softened. Doctor, your letters were destroyed by Lady Beatrice, I believe, to protect her own. Your secret is safe, but I urge you to make peace with your wife. Honesty, it is the only path to healing. Evelyn Warrender, her eyes red from tears, nodded silently, her hand resting on her husband's. Victor Langston, ever reserved, cleared his throat. And Sir Reginald, where is he now? Poirot turned to Inspector Davies, who stood near the door, his notebook closed. Inspector, you have men in London. I have provided the address, a small flat in Bloomsbury, rented under a false name. Sir Reginald is there, kept under watch by an associate of Monsieur Trent. I trust you will find him unharmed. Davies nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging admiration. We'll have him back by morning, Monsieur Poirot. You've done us a turn, I'll give you that. Poirot inclined his head, but his gaze returned to the guests. This affair, it is a tragedy of the heart. Lady Beatrice sacrificed her honor for love, or what she believed was love. Sir Reginald, in his pride, used secrets as weapons, wounding those around him. And all of you carried your own burdens, your own fears, which clouded the truth. The lesson, Mies Amos, is that secrets, they fester. Only in the light of truth can we find peace. Hastings, watching his friend, felt a pang of awe. Poirot's ability to see through the tangle of lies, to uncover not just the crime but the human frailties behind it, was nothing short of miraculous. Yet there was a sadness in Poirot's eyes, a recognition of the cost of such truths. Monsieur Poirot, Clara said, her voice softer now, how did you know it was Beatrice? The typewriter, the grids, could have been any of us. The Poirot's smile was faint, almost wistful. Mademoiselle, it was the details. The typewriter in the attic, hidden but not too well, bore her fingerprints. Not Monsieur Langston's. The grease linked it to the boathouse, where she and Trent staged the scene. The note in Sir Reginald's hand, it was written at her dictation, a moment of coercion disguised as despair. And Perkins, the butler, saw her near the study, not in the powder room. The little gray cells, they pieced together the inconsistencies. Too perfect footprint, the clean shoe, the blood that was not enough for death. It was a performance, but one that could not withstand scrutiny. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling over them. Hastings glanced out the window, where the lawn stretched toward the lake, now calm under the moon's pale light. The boathouse, once a scene of deception, stood silent, its secrets laid bare as the guests began to disperse. Their movements slow and heavy. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, This case, it reminds us that the heart is both the motive and the victim. Lady Beatrice sought freedom, but found only chains of her own making. So Reginald, he will return, but his trust, it is broken, and we move on to the next puzzle. Hastings nodded, his throat tight. You did it again, Poirot. You saw what none of us could. Poirot's eyes twinkled, though the sadness remained. It is my burden, Hastings, to see too much, but it is also my purpose. Come, let us prepare to leave this place. Greystone Manor has no more secrets for us. They stepped into the corridor. The sound of the grandfather clock echoed behind them, its chimes a somber farewell to a house forever changed. The mystery was solved, but the scars it left would linger, a testament to the sad sacrifice at the heart of this tragic tale. Chapter 12. The quiet departure. The dawn broke over Greystone Manor with a reluctant light. The sky streaked with pale pinks and grays, as though mourning the revelations of the previous night. The rain had left the lawns glistening, and the air carried a crisp, clean scent that contrasted sharply with the heavy atmosphere within the house. The drawing room, now empty of its tense gatherings, stood silent, its grandeur diminished by the weight of betrayal and loss. Hercule Poirot, his suitcase neatly packed, stood in the entrance hall, his patent leather shoes gleaming and his mustache perfectly waxed, ready to depart. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt a mix of relief and melancholy, the resolution of the mystery leaving a bittersweet aftertaste. The events of the night before lingered in Hastings' mind. Lady Beatrice's tearful confession, Julian Trent's defiant silence as they were led away by Inspector Davies, and the stunned faces of the remaining guests as Poirot unraveled the intricate web of deception. Sir Reginald Ashford, as Poirot had predicted, had been found in a Bloomsbury flat, shaken but unharmed, coerced into hiding by the threat of public disgrace over his debts and the letters that held his wife's past. The police had recovered him early that morning, and he was expected to return to Greystone Manor by midday. Though what awaited him, a fractured marriage and a tarnished legacy, was a heavier burden than any debt, Poirot, adjusting his hat with precise care, turned to Hastings, his eyes bright but tinged with the quiet sorrow that often followed his triumphs. Mon ami, he said, his voice soft. This case, it has been a study in the human heart. Greystone Manor, it is a beautiful shell, but within it held only secrets and sacrifice. We have done our work, but the cost, it is never small. Hastings nodded, his thoughts drifting to Lady Beatrice, whose desperate bid for freedom had led to her ruin. It's tragic, Poirot. She thought she could escape, but she only trapped herself. And Sir Reginald, how does a man come back to a life so broken? Poirot's smile was faint, almost philosophical. We'll rebuild, Hastings, as men do, but he will carry the scars. The letters, they were his power, but also his poison. He used them to control his wife, Dr. Warrender, perhaps others. In doing so, he sowed the seeds of his own betrayal. They stepped out into the morning air, where a car waited to take them to the station. The manor staff, subdued and watchful, lined up to bid them farewell. Perkins, the butler, bowed stiffly, his face etched with relief that the ordeal was over. Clara Henshaw stood on the steps, her auburn curls catching the light, her expression a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. Sir Poirot, she said, her voice steady but soft, you've given us the truth, but I'm not sure I'm grateful for it. This house, it won't be the same. Poirot inclined his head, his eyes kind. Mademoiselle, the truth, it is a bitter medicine, but it heals. You are young, and you have the strength to forge a new path. Greystone Manor, it will endure, as will you. Dr. Warrender and Evelyn approached, their hands clasped tightly, faces marked by the strain of their own secrets laid bare. Monsieur, Poirot, Warrender said, his voice rough. "I owe you my thanks. You spared my reputation, though I didn't deserve it." Poirot's gaze was steady. "Doctor, the letters are gone, but the lesson remains. Be honest with your wife, and you will find peace." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she managed a nod. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for everything." Victor Langston, the last to approach, offered a curt nod. "You've cleared my name, Poirot, though I didn't ask for it. I'll see to Sir Reginald's affairs when he returns. He'll need a steady hand." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "You, Monsieur Langston, will provide it, I trust. But beware the temptation to hold secrets as power. It is a dangerous game." As the car pulled away, Hastings looked back at the manor, its Elizabethan facade looming against the dawn. What? Now, Poirot, back to London, to the next mystery. Poirot leaned back, his hands folded over his waistcoat. "Oui, mon ami. London awaits, with its bustle and its secrets. But first, I shall require a cup of my tisane, and perhaps a moment to reflect. Case. It has reminded me of the fragility of trust, and the price of love misguided." Hastings smiled, though his heart was heavy. "You were brilliant, as always. The way you saw through the typewriter, the grease, the staged clousets, remarkable." Poirot's mustache twitched with a hint of pride. "The little gray cells, Hastings, they do not fail. But they see not only the crime, but the sadness behind it. Lady Beatrice, she loved, but her love was a cage. Sir Reginald, he controlled, but his control was his downfall. We who seek the truth must bear witness to both the triumph and the tragedy." The car rolled through the Sussex countryside, the manor fading into the distance. Hastings thought of the boathouse, the lake, the study, all now silent, their secrets laid bare. The mystery of Sir Reginald's disappearance had been solved, but the echoes of its resolution would linger in the hearts of those left behind as they neared the station. Poirot spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "Life, mon ami, it is a puzzle, but it is also a story, and in every story there is a sacrifice. Let us hope the next one we uncover is less sad." The train's whistle sounded in the distance, a call to move forward, to leave Greystone Manor, and its ghosts behind. Hastings settled back, ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that with Poirot by his side, no mystery was too great, no truth too hidden. The sad sacrifice of Greystone Manor was over, but the world, as ever, held more secrets to unravel.